Yeah, done.
Brill. So, welcome everyone to the West and North show and tell for Sprint 15 or 16, but effectively this is the June show and tell. I have been working with the team since September of last year before West and North became councils. My name's Conley and I'm a delivery manager at FutureGov, who are a change consultancy. And this is actually the 13th show and tell that we've done. We have aimed to work in the open and present our work to you all every fortnight or every sprint that we've been working. And more recently, we've been doing a show and tell at the end of each month. So if this is your first show and tell, this is a little bit about what you'd expect. So what we aim to do in these sessions is to show progress early and often. So you're going to see all of the work that we were able to work on, deliver, deploy, and release in June. We'd like to get your feedback. So please, if there's anything that comes up on the screen that you're more interested about or you'd like to challenge or question, please feel free to put any questions in the chat, as well as making sure that it's not only the people involved in the day-to-day work that kind of shape things. We want to make sure we hear from you. So we're also going to be talking about what's next. So if there's anything that you think we should prioritize or look at, please feel free to raise your hand and come off mute or use the chat at any point. We're really keen to hear any ideas. In the last show and tell, we had a counsellor tell us about a really cool tool for some of the app work, for the map work that we are working on. So if you've got any ideas that come to mind, we'd love to hear from you. So what we're going to cover today, there's lots happening. We are going to talk about the achievements in June, the team updates. There's got a few shuffling teams. We did a few lunch and learns that are on YouTube. So if any of this interests you, you can watch it on YouTube. The website content migration is continuing. So we've started with early years and there's going to be a bit of an update on the eForms work. Directories, if you were here in the last show and tell, we spoke about something called a lean team where we did a human-centered design experiment. We focused on council tax and car parks as our directory focus areas. So we'll give an update on that. There's been a lot of development learning. So a lot of the team from both the West and North have come together to learn from FutureGov and Decent about what we built and the infrastructure we had before April 1, before vesting day. So we've been trying to make that more of a BAU process. Accessibility is a big one for our show and tell today. So we're going to tell you a little bit more about how we've been doing that. Both automated and manual accessibility testing and reports have been done. And the activity Lucy's going to run you through is all about what accessibility means to you. So we're going to ask a few more questions around that. Richard, who's the product owner, is going to tell you what's next, so what features or what improvements we're looking to make over the next month. And any questions or comments, hopefully we'll have time at the end to go through anything that comes up in the chat. So a little introduction from me is all about thanking the team. So, jumping ahead. So the team that are on the call that we were presenting, we wrangled hundreds of services across 8 different sovereign authorities. We worked on content prioritization exercise. We set up and conducted user research with a panel of up to 500 residents. We created some design systems. We have a content management system, which the website sits on. We worked on hosting and infrastructure. We built components. We helped out with comms. We did some week notes to share our learnings. We helped fill the gaps when any other internal, external teams didn't have what we needed. We shared knowledge and skills, and everyone is doing such a great job. And so this is a little thank you and a token of appreciation. The sites look really, really good. It's a very good foundation that we've built, and we've got some really good feedback across the board. And I think that's something that we are going to continue to work on. There's a lot of work to do, and I know that you're going to do some amazing work over the next few months to take the minimal viable product, which you can see on the websites, and take it into something that's just on a next level to help serve the residents and the businesses in the neighbourhood. So you should feel very proud, and I just want to also say thank you to any services that are dialing in or any counsellors that are dialing in that we were able to talk to get to the sites where they are today. So thank you for being a part of the journey. I'm going to hand over to Richard to tell everyone about some of the achievements that we did this month.
Thanks, Connolly. I think first off, from the project team, we just wanted to say thank you to yourself, Juliet and Fiona, who have delivered this project. I know all three are rolling off now, but they've really been the foundation of what's been delivered, and were ruthless in their driving of the project. And some of us have still got the scars to prove that. There'll be a really big miss for all of us in the team. It's been a really close-knit team, but I think the three there really were close knit together as well, and absolutely drove us forward to deliver this work. So thanks very much on behalf of our team for making us all look good over the last 6 months. So in June we have been busy. There's a list of things there that we're all kind of working on for the next phase. A big part of the last 3 months has been FutureGov skilling up our internal IT development team. So FutureGov's team built the first iterations of the site, but going forward, we need to be self-sustainable, support these sites and build them in-house. So that's been going well. We've been doing a few developments with the team alongside FutureGov to skill those developers up. So we've got the homepage we're updating with the kind of Prince Philip themed site. When Prince Philip passed, we had a monochrome site and displayed a little bit of information on the homepage. So we're doing a phase 2 of that to show a bit more respect, be able to develop that homepage a little bit more to dominate the upper part of the homepage, I guess, if that situation happens again. But it would just be the homepage that changes. The rest of the site, taking the user feedback, will stay the same. The grayscale will just be there on the homepage. So that's something that's being built. Accessibility improvements, that's a really important thing. Rob will talk about that later, but the developers have been working on that to keep our scores really high and trying to get the Sure Trust accreditation. And then a major part of the work has been developing directories. So as the content is migrated over and improved, we'll be looking to build directories for things like council tax, car parks, schools directories. So I think we'll talk about that a little bit more in the future as well. So plenty of things have been going on in June. And then one of those was also the lunch and learns. If anyone came to these, they were really impressive. So again, FutureGov put these sessions on, kind of like master classes. The list there, content design, service design. I was at both of those. I thought they were fantastic. So we had some great feedback from people, and that is what a lot of this project has been about, really. It hasn't just been about building 2 websites. It's been taking on all the learning and the skills that FutureGov have got and the way they approach everything, really, the modern digital tools they use, that whole user-centered approach to things, and passing that skill set not only into the web and digital teams, but the wider council teams as well. So these sessions are available on YouTube. You can get to them via the intranet site. If you just search Web Team, either in the North or the West intranets, all those videos are on there, and they're really good learning, not just for our teams, like I said, but if you're in transformation or if your team's looking to transform, there's some really interesting material there around service design. And if you're someone who writes content on a website, some really really great stuff on there, and almost like an A to Z of how you should be writing content. So please do make use of that. We'll be running some more of these sessions in future. I think July is the next one. We're going to be looking at a user research one. So that's again a big part of how these sites have been developed and how we'll continue to work in the future around user research. So do try and watch that. And if you're interested, you can email Panos there to attend that, and we'll send the invites out. So I think next up is David. This is the major part of the work that we're doing, is the content update, bringing the content over from the sovereign site. So David will give us an update on progress.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've used cogs for my screen because it feels like everything's fitting together nicely at the moment, all the different teams and different processes, and we're getting moving. Fine-tuning the process, basically taking what we've learned from FutureGov prior to vesting day and just fitting it into a process that we can move forward to move the rest of the content over to the unitary sites. So that's been a lot of kind of putting initial documentation together, having meetings with services, and then just tweaking the sort of presentations and spreadsheets and things just to get things how we want them so it works for everybody. And we're also fine-tuning the content guidelines. So services have been asking about this, which is great, how they put content together for us. we're just finalising a content template for to make that easier for when we work with services, and the guidelines really support that sort of content creation process. So services can follow those guidelines, and then it's also a tool for us to go back and check consistency throughout the site, which has been really helpful already, and will be all the way through. We've also started the user research, which I won't go into detail on because Panos is going to update later in the presentation. But that sounds like it's going really well, and started to receive the first content through from services, which is always a kind of a relief when you kick off something like this and you start to get things through and you think, aha, the process is working, and it's nice to see pages being published, and to see how services are going about sort of, for some of them, huge task of putting this content together. So certainly for one of the services, that involved a meeting to split themselves up into subgroups to work on individual bits of content, and that was really good to be a part of and see the kind of behind the scenes of how they're going to organise getting all that together. I just thought I'd show you a couple of slides about a bit more in depth about the kind of content design we're doing, and a bit more about why we're doing it. So for this one, you've got two screenshots. The top one is the Sovereign County site with a page dedicated to scrutiny, and then the bottom one is how we've moved that over onto the west side. So it's overview and scrutiny heading there on the page as part of the wider committees page. Broken the content down, because that screenshot at the top, that isn't the whole page, it was much longer than that. Broken the content down, put it into a more relevant page, made the sentences more concise, easier to read, and it's this kind of small content improvement that will all add up. So this is just a really tiny example, but if we apply these standards across the site, then it should really help. So if we go on to the next one, this is probably a better example, because when you get content through, a lot of it will be in documents, be in PDFs or Word documents or that kind of thing, and it will be very easy for us to just upload them to the site and tick the box. But this is one where it went to Rob, and he thought actually it'd be much better to have information like this on the site in page content. So it's more work up front rather than just clicking upload to actually replicate that in a page. But it's much more accessible, easier for everyone to use. And then a key one for services, I think, that it's much easier to update. So if one of those figures is wrong, for example, it means that we don't have to then track down the original document and the person who created it and then redo the document. It's just a keystroke and republish the page, and it's all done. So doing that across the site and challenging things and trying to kind of aim for best practice. Those are just a couple of examples of the sorts of things we're doing at the moment, and working across around 15 services, I would say, at the moment, getting content in, meeting with people, and just setting expectations and working together. And I think we're really happy with how it's going so far. I think that's me, so I'll hand over to Ian.
Thanks, David. Yep, so hopefully, fingers crossed, one of the reasons that it's going okay so far is that we've spent the last couple of months trying to put the right systems and documentation in place to kind of make it happen. This is kind of a list of stuff that we've created so far, but it could change. I think that's the thing to always think about with the content and the approach to the content, is that if something isn't working, then change it, improve it. If we need a new document, great, we'll create one. If we need to get rid of something, then that's fine. But so far, this is what we have. The reason that the content strategy has still got the little tools there is because that's still in progress. But in reality, we've spent the last sort of 2 months talking about the strategy, and even before that. So in terms of actual practical documents that we need to get started, all of the others have been more important. So the strategy is still in progress, but the rest is kind of up and in action. Particularly the content roadmap, which is what the screenshot is there that David created. It's kind of the essential document. The documents rule them all. Next one. David mentioned the content guidelines. So this is something that I've been working on. And this is really, it's quite a short document, intentionally so. We want it to be really practical and easy to read and understand. But it's kind of the how we do it. It's the how we do content for these two new unitary sites. And in a kind of nuts and bolts kind of way. So as you can see from that screenshot, like how do we do headings? Like it's in this document. It's that kind of hands-on stuff. There's also writing advice in this document as well, so how to write in plain English. So some of the stuff that I talked through in the workshop is just very much condensed into this document too. And the idea is that this will go out to anyone who produces content first and foremost. So anyone that works on content from the service areas, they can have this when it's their turn to do content for the sites. They can have this as part of the initial, I guess, package that they get, and use it to guide what they do when they're writing. And this is the thing that we've just created, and again, David mentioned it. So this is like a page template. So this is, rather than just say, yeah, go away, write lots of pages for the website. This document, this kind of template, is what we want service areas to use, and it's one document per page. So don't just put all of the content into one document. We want it to be able to easily find it in our file system. There are going to be hundreds and hundreds of pages by the time we finished. So one document per web page. It's got clear fields to complete, so you can hopefully understand what's needed, and that matches the CMS too. We've got that grey text that you can see but probably can't read is just like inline guidance. So really simple stuff so that, yes, we have the content guidelines and we link to those, but actually just on this template itself, there is a little bit of guidance to explain exactly what we mean, just in case somebody somewhere gets given the job of writing a web page and it's like, I don't even know what this is. There is at least some guidance within that. And that's it. And I don't know who this is, but I'm going to guess Panos.
That's right, yeah. Thank you, Ian. So as David mentioned before, I'm just going to be talking a little bit about what we've done so far in terms of user research. And the area we have looked at with Lawrence is around early years. So, I mean, I'd like to lead first by asking, like, why do we want to do user research? And even before saying that, I'd just like to mention that we want to think of the website more as a service rather than just a static product. Because if we think of it as a product, it's just, oh, we've delivered this thing, it's done, it just stays there. So if we think of it as a service, it's more of a growing thing, a changing thing. So yeah. So the first question is around, like, why do we do user research? Well, the first thing is that we always want to design for everyone, right? And not just who we think the service is for, just like for every single person. And the best way to do this is to immerse ourselves like within context and understand how the actual users perceive and actually use this service rather than just us making assumptions. And why we also want to do this is that there's also always this misconception around, oh, this is very easy to use, therefore it was very easy to make, which is usually the exact opposite. If something's really easy to use, it was very, very difficult to make. So how we're going around doing this is we're looking at both quantitative and qualitative data. Most of the quantitative data is around stats, I guess. And Michael Shelton and other people in the team are really good at doing that stuff. Lawrence and myself are focusing more on the qualitative aspect of it, which is more around interviews with different users and different stakeholders. And that's what we're trying to do at the moment. And at the end of the day, we want to have some outcomes by doing this user research. So we want to firstly gather some insights, right? So we want to find some patterns around, yes, the stats and around the usage, but also insights around the various interviews we had, reoccurring patterns, something similar that people said, some common pain points that they may have thematically as well. And out of these things, we want to create what we call user stories. That's an example of a user story right there as this thing. I want to do this goal so that I can benefit in this way. That's an example of it. It can be more situational if you want to, but that is an example. And finally, we want to address these user stories like within our user needs. when curating the content and when finding or creating different solutions. That, by the way, that photo right there on the right is a photo I took when I went to GDS, and I absolutely love it because you know, the worst thing about it is that I took it portrait instead of landscape because I suck at taking photographs. But otherwise, you know, it shows that you know, there's a thing right there that's missing a leg, missing an arm, with an eye patch. You know, it's a pirate. So, you know, we want to design for everyone, including everyone. And, you know, that's a good example of that. Anyway, so so far on this front, on the user research front, Lawrence and myself, we've talked to 7 different people from different schools about their day-to-day jobs, how they currently use the website and other resources on it. And we especially try to focus around what their pain points are and what their journeys are when they're using these things. The next step is to try and consolidate all this information together. So Lawrence and myself are going to have what we call a synthesis session tomorrow, where we're going to find all these common patterns, combine them together, and make some tangible user stories and then action points off of that. And we're going to be able to share that with the wider content team as well as the service as well. So I did talk a little bit about user research, and as Richard mentioned before, we're going to have a lunch and learn around it. So do please contact me if you want to be involved in that. I think it's going to be, you know, really, really nice, and I think it's something that as an organization we really need to invest in as well. So that's me. I'm not going to talk any longer. I'm going to pass it on to Lucy now.
Thanks, Panos. Yeah, just to give a brief update then on kind of the progress of eForms and trying to tie in any sort of eForms work with the Move and Improve, so the content migration work that David touched on earlier. So one of the main things we've sort of worked on recently is just making some improvements to our existing process to allow, you know, like almost like a smoother alignment between the content migration stuff. And if, you know, any of the service areas have any online forms, trying to like tie us in with that to get either the online forms split. So there's a North and a West version. So kind of considering whether the form is, you know, a former NCC form or a former district borough form. And that also then ties in with that second bullet point around our online form template document. So obviously taking that approach of providing the template document similar to the content migration work, we also have our own document that we use for online form builds. So this is more specific for district and borough forms. So obviously as they're on previous sovereign systems, we obviously want to get them onto the new temporary online form system FirmStep. And in order to do that, we provide this online form template so that we can capture as much information as possible from the service area, not just necessarily the questions within the form, but also the you know, the form owner who needs access to the form data, what the output of the data needs to be, whether that's a CSV spreadsheet format or if that's individual PDF output. So lots of information we kind of require, and it's always useful to get that information up front. So yeah, just to sort of touch on the importance of that template document, wanting to make sure that it's kind of handed over to the service area in sort of like the first few meetings that we have with them, just to make sure that they're aware that this is what we require of them. And just to kind of touch on a couple of specific forms or service areas we've started to work with. So within licensing in the West, we've managed to get 5 of their animal licensing forms built now, and they're currently within the test environment being tested, and then hopefully by the end of this week, start of next, we can start looking to get those moved over to the live platform and then hopefully live on the new West site. The North building control application form, so there's 3 of those that we're working on building at the moment and hoping to get those back with the service shortly. And also we're looking or have looked at splitting some of the adult social care online forms. So as those were a former NCC service, it was quite important to get those split soon after the 1st of April, so that the service areas that process the data in the back end aren't sharing a back office. So now the majority of those forms have been split, and we've received a lot of really positive feedback from the service area in processing those, just because it's obviously made it a lot simpler. And that also then means that those online forms are ready to go when in the migration timeline we get to those. So yeah, just sort of with online forms, making things as easy as possible for the guys in the content migration team. And with that, I believe I'm passing over to Stephen Miller to start talking about council tax directories.
Hey, so we've had a lean team in place for the last number of weeks to look at how we create directories. Essentially, directories are a way to display content. In this case, it's kind of a way of displaying a large set of data in a user-friendly way. And this is my last opportunity, I think, to ask the question to Connolly, but what is the Disney question?
What time is the 2 o'clock Disney parade? Is that right, Stephen?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, sorry.
3 o'clock.
It's close.
Yeah, so we take that into account. So if we've got a user at that level, the tools that we provide have to be easy enough to use for someone at that kind of level who asks a silly question like that. So one of the first directories we wanted to look at was how we could display council tax amounts for the different parish and town councils that we've got. Without having to use an inaccessible download. They're published every year as part of data transparency, and it's used by kind of a fair number of users. And it's a comparison of what different town councils kind of charge, and if any particular town or village is cheaper or more expensive than the other. But what kind of Panos and Northants found from their kind of good user testing and research was that actually we had an even larger customer base who wanted to find out what specific properties were charged. And this kind of currently isn't a great user journey for them, because you can check a property's specific band on the central government website, but it wouldn't actually tell you the amount they charge. Or you could go to the individual council sovereign sites, which makes it a rather complicated journey of sending them here, there and everywhere, especially if they want to check properties in more than one area. So we had to look at two problems that we needed to solve: how to view an individual property charge and how to view a whole parish charges from bands A to H for data transparency. So these are the screenshots of what we've kind of come up with. On the left-hand side, that's the parish charge. It's literally an A to Z list of all the parishes broken down into the letters. And it's just a case of literally clicking on them and it'll show the parish charges A to H. And it's literally as simple as that, which meets the Disney question. And then the next slide, please. Yep, that's an individual property charge. Again, we want to make it really, really simple. So it's just a case of inputting your postcode, selecting the property, and it will display the charge in the area it's in. And it's so simple. What's going on in the background, as Panos just said earlier, is very, very complicated and hard to do, but from a customer perspective, it's a really simple journey for them to be able to use. I'll pop a link to the prototype as well into the chat. If you click on the council tax prototypes in the left menu, when you click on that link, you'll be able to kind of see it in a little bit more action and have it in a kind of more interactive state. But the team have done an amazing job, and we hope to see it soon. And then I think I'm passing on to car parks and Lawrence.
Hello, and thanks, Stephen. This part of the lean team experiment also dealt with car parks as ways of displaying non-narrative data, because initially we had been prohibited by Panos to call things directories, because he said we cannot use the name of a solution in trying to solve the problem. So in car parks was more straightforward than council tax. One of the things that would be remarkable is that most users wanted to see how to pay, and we realized that in the current places on the web, we didn't have a way of telling people whether they can use an app, So we were able to find out a few things and to rearrange this information in a more like usable format and try to establish the first three 3 things that will make someone make a decision of which car park to use, and bring those forward closer, lesser clicks to find that relevant information. In the next slide would be like the detailed page. So in the details page gives you more details and can link to a map which would take you to find directions if you need that. In the next slide, we tried an option without the map, just trying to preempt the user journey where someone would like to go after seeing and making those decisions. We see at what point we provide this information as an option. All these things are due for testing and getting feedback from users. And then mobile, definitely. We talk of mobile first, in as much as the mockups and these components are done in the desktop. Always remember that most of the people who viewed the new websites from the last stats were more than 65%, I guess, on mobile. So we also do the responsive mobile fast design. So in the next slide, it's just a common theme with this narrative data. We Panos came up with a very complex affinity diagram to try and establish which kind of services are related in terms of user needs and the kind of data they are providing. So this on the left-hand side is place-based offering, place-based products or services, and they all have things in common. We found that people would like to search from a large list of listings or databases, and for that reason, they will need to filter to reduce the number of results they find, and also have kind of a sorting by relevance or distance, which we can actually default to, especially if someone is trying to park, for instance. They would always like list from the nearest, the next nearest, or schools for that matter. So we found waste and recycling centers, that kind of a service, wedding venues, schools, libraries, and family information services. So now these have not been mocked up in code yet because they have to align with David and Stephen's timeline for migrating content. But we already had a bit of initial research and testing, and it's ready to go. Yeah, that's all from me. It was a very enjoyable exercise. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence. I think one of the aims as well for the directories is to be able to reuse what we build. So I think previously at our councils, we would develop something and no one else could use it. We'd have to develop things from scratch each time. So reusing these patterns and code and building that directories up. So things like the FIS system and the schools directories, that would be a big part of what we're looking to do. So as I said earlier, a big part of this phase of the work has been onboarding the new developers. So they've had really intensive kind of one-to-one sessions with FutureGov, lots of support from them in setting up their machines, their environments, and getting them up to speed on how to develop in this new platform. There's also been a new process created. So the web team are going to work closely with the IT digital dev team in the future. So Josie's put a fantastic diagram together that we can work towards in terms of that process and how we'll log new work, log bugs, that kind of thing. So that partnership will be key going forward, as well as we develop the site. As I said earlier, becoming self-sufficient, having an internal dev team. So as good as FutureGov have been, you know, their aim was to leave us to be self-sufficient, still be there in the background as support, but we really need to pick this up now and take it forward. So you can see a nice picture there of a ship. The developers had a session where they were able to talk about and express how they were feeling about the onboarding process, how they were feeling about the project in general. And again, this is another way of new ways of working for us, certainly, in terms of having virtual meetings, but then sessions like this where it's really visual, really interactive, everyone getting involved and talking about, you know, just being brutally honest where people are at, how they're feeling with the project. And I think that's definitely one of the things I've learned from Connolly. Whether I implement it or not is a totally different matter, but sort of like being totally open and inclusive in these meetings, non-judgmental, and creating an environment where people feel free to have their say. You know, we've all been in meetings where some people talk, some people don't, but she'll bring people in who are quiet, you know, in a really good way, no pressure, anything like that. And she gets everyone to have their say and engage and just get involved with it. So yeah, that's been a really big learning curve for us, and especially on the development side. And I think now, Rob, hopefully if you're still in this session, you're going to talk about accessibility. think Rob's been having a few technical issues. Are you there, Rob?
Rob, if you can hear me, I can make a start. I'll tap in. So hi everyone, it's Conley again. I am going to tell you a little bit about accessibility, and I'm hoping Rob.
Hello.
Oh, Rob is here.
I'm there. I've been having terrible technical issues today, so apologies if I disappear or break up. Am I still there? Yes. Okay. Yeah, what I'd say is testing for accessibility is a bit like making coffee. There's no one way of doing it. Do you want a quick fix or a more intense experience? Automated testing is quick and easy, a bit like a cup of instant coffee. It's convenient, but it lacks depth. We use SiteMorse as an automated accessibility checker. This is run on our site weekly, and we can request instant checks as and when we want. It's convenient, but because it's automated, it can only report on a limited number of accessibility errors. And these tend to be issues with text copy, PDFs, missing alt text from images, things that can be checked automatically that do not to be physically checked. The automated testing also checks for other issues that are not strictly accessibility issues, like broken links, spelling errors, and suggestions for improving search engine optimization. When SiteMorse runs automatically every Monday afternoon, these reports are checked every Tuesday morning usually, and errors fixed or reported to the developers if they're not errors that we can fix in the web team. The weekly reports give us an overall score out of 10. This Monday, the scores for our sites were 9.7 for the West and 8.7 for the North, which have been rounded up to 10 and 9 on the screenshots, but both scoring 10 out of 10 for the accessibility aspect. This is only part of the story. There's no point us seeing an issue and correcting it if we have unintentionally put another accessibility blocker in the way that the automated testing cannot pick up. A step up from automated testing is manual testing, giving us a more full-bodied and rounded set of results, like a home-filtered coffee. Although we could attempt to do this ourselves, given the time and resources we currently have available, we have employed the Sure Trust. They employ people with disabilities to check websites for issues that prevent them from being able to access the website. They've come back to us with their initial set of results, which picked up 14 or so issues which the automated testing has not, which in the grand scheme of things is not that bad. The majority of errors they reported have needed developer intervention to amend page templates, etc. Although they did also flag up some issues with third-party software we are using, like the Hotjar tool, which we are using for customer feedback, and FirmStep, which is used for the online forms. We have 6 months from receiving this report to fix errors before they give us another full and final check to pass our sites as fully accessible. If, as in the case of the third-party errors, we cannot fix the issues, we have to state what the issue is and what prevents people from being able, or from what it prevents people from being able to do on our accessibility statement, which is on the website. The developer fixes are due to be deployed shortly, and once we're happy with the changes, we can ask Sure Trust for an interim check so they can confirm that these corrections are indeed okay before we ask them for a full and final check to be signed off as fully accessible. Going forward, it's our aim to contact local people with disabilities that are willing to check our website for any issues. It's only by witnessing their workflows and the barriers that disabled people may encounter for accessing the site that we can finally tune things. These will be our baristas helping us make the perfect cup of coffee. If you'll be creating content for the website, please make sure you have taken and completed the accessibility course on iLearn. Just log into iLearn and search for accessibility. I'll now hand you over to Lucy, who has an accessibility audience discussion for you.
Thanks, Rob, you're getting lots of comments about your smooth delivery, coffee delivery tone in the chat, so I recommend reading that. Sorry, Lucy, just wanted to pop in.
That's fine. I really don't know how I'm going to follow up after that. So thank you, Rob. Brilliantly delivered. Hopefully I do some justice now with the audience activity. So now it's over to the people in the audience. We'd like to hear from you based around the question that you can see on the screen now. So there isn't a poll or there's nothing Menti related this week. We'd just like you to use the chat, or please come off mute if you're feeling brave enough. But basically just discussing, what does accessibility mean to you? So if anyone would like to put anything in the chat, I will read it out, or if you want to come off mute.
I'll come off mute, shall I? 'Cause it's more fun that way.
Yes, absolutely, please.
I think accessibility means to me that it's access for all. So whenever you're designing something, you should think that everybody should be able to see it, whether it's down to font, whether it's down to how you word stuff. And I must admit, actually, Rob's taught me a few things around how content should be. So, you know, that's always been insightful for how we then continue to do stuff going forward. So equally as well, I think you can learn a lot just by having a discussion about accessibility as well. But for me, it's about it being accessible for all.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Juliet's just added a comment there about there being no barriers and that everything is equal access for all is very much the main crux of accessibility, is to be inclusive and making sure that everyone can access whatever it needs, whatever information they need to access. Lawrence, you've put your hand up.
Yeah, for me, it's a ability for people to use the service without requiring assistance. Ideally, if I can do it myself, I don't need someone to lift me, push me, read for me, give me something to, you know. So accessibility, less assistance or no assistance.
Yeah, brilliant. Panos?
Yeah, just, I mean, it's most everything has been said, but also to add to that, it's not only like being able to use something permanently, but also taking into account like temporary situations. Like if you're in panic mode, you can still use that. If you've only got one hand available, you broke your one hand, you can still use the service and all of those things as well.
Yeah, I like that one. David?
I was just going to say, sometimes from a content design point of view, because it is easy to say, oh, you know, everyone should be able to use something, but when you're actually looking at something, or you know, taking in some content, it's about thinking who might not be able to use it. So picking out specific examples of situations or specific disabilities where people with those conditions or disabilities wouldn't be able to use something, and then thinking, right, how do we make that better for them?
Yeah, one of the things that I've just thought of where you've mentioned that, David, is where we did some user research once with somebody who had a visual impairment, but they could see almost like a sort of like a certain amount of, I guess, light, and the way they kind of navigated across the screen was to zoom in quite closely, and then that kind of brought out to me how much white space there was on a certain page or an online form, and therefore how difficult it made it for them to navigate from you know, the question to the answers, which would be on the right hand side. And now that kind of explains to me why it's better practice to have, you know, the question to sit above the actual answer, so you can just scroll down, because that's almost like someone's like natural movement across a web page, I guess. Lawrence, did you have anything else to add?
I was thinking of context as following on David saying, imagining someone using the service. And also, it's not just about their inability or limited ability, but also the context, whether they're in a noisy place or they're outdoors trying to read something. I think that's a part of accessibility that is easy to forget, because we are thinking of people who are less privileged or in, you know, but the context as well. It could be someone who is a genius in English, but the contrast isn't enough, or like myself, new to the UK, driving south in the winter, and the main junction lights were just ahead of me, and the backlight made it harder for me to know the junction to turn off. So context is key as well. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, just to highlight some of the comments, obviously Andy's put simple, clear, concise. Gavin, making your show and tell sessions easy to follow and no barriers. Lots of people saying obviously about the ease of use, for things to be relatable, not ambiguous, use of plain English, taking into account those with dialectical disabilities. So yeah, some really, really good thoughts and comments there. So thank you for your input. This is just almost like a secondary exercise, or just some kind of discussion again. So here you can see an image of a play area that myself and Connolly did a bit of a Google search yesterday. So we didn't come up with this, but this was an example that I found when searching for an inaccessible play area. So putting it into the context of, you know, a young child or a family going to a play area, what are some of the, I suppose, if you imagine yourself entering this play area, would you deem it as accessible? Are there things in the play area that are, and then are there areas of the play area that aren't so much? If anyone wants to add their comments to this, think about things like the actual physical access to the play area. You can see there in the bottom right corner that there is a gateway in, and you've got that like pathway. Would it be potentially too narrow for people perhaps in a wheelchair? Would they be able to get through? Does anyone have anything they'd like to add to this image? Any comments? Simon, you've put there that it's very busy. Exactly. I mean, there's and Gavin, no signage, the high contrasting colours, so that potentially an accessible point there, that obviously it's kind of indicating the different areas, those lines perhaps against the path, kind of describing the kind of the edge, I guess. The fact that the train has derailed, yes, Stephen, the train has derailed from that track. Yeah, it is difficult to kind of focus attention, and I suppose taking in that busy element, once you enter the park, there's lots to kind of take in, lots to see. Perhaps if it was more spread out, or if there were less things, people could maybe get around a bit easier. Something I kind of noticed was there aren't many activities or things to do on the ground. A lot of it is kind of raised. You can see there are a fair few sort of like climbing frames, so the actual like ground level access. There's no ice cream van. Yes, very good, Gavin. I just spotted that one. Brilliant. Yeah, some really good points there. So that was obviously the result of my inaccessible play area search. And then here again, I guess you could probably say it's fairly busy too, but this was the result or the outcome of searching for an accessible playground. And you can see that there's no fence around the edge, which could potentially allow more people to access the park a lot easier. There are a lot more. One of the things I noticed was that there are a lot more ground level activities, and potentially, I know you can't see the other side, but potentially on the other side there might be a ramp or something, because it looks to me like some of the I guess you could say the pathways up to sort of like the higher levels of the play area do look wider, and potentially that reason is because wheelchair access, that sort of thing. Does anybody notice anything else here that's more accessible than the previous picture? Again, there's obviously that use of contrasting colours, lots of like bright things, making the slides, I guess, a brighter colour, so they stand out and people can kind of see them as they're navigating around the park, so perhaps a reason so they don't trip up. Yeah, Nikki's just said a good point there about things being a lot lower, so people like wheelchair users are able to access more of the activities. So yeah, I think if we go to the next slide, so basically the reason for that sort of discussion there was just to kind of take that analogy and put it into the context of website design, website creation, and essentially we have to take that same approach in the Playground B example when it comes to creating websites, website content, online forms and that sort of thing, and ensuring that we do that every time we do it, so that everything on the website is as accessible as it possibly can be. On the slide now you can see a couple of points there, not everything but just a few like really key points around making sure we're writing in plain English, allowing the use of headings or H tags to be able to define the hierarchy on a page or potentially a document. Anything like that, so that someone can kind of like skip through the web page to pick out the information that they're looking for. Providing relevant alternative text for images, so those who aren't maybe able to see the image know what the image is describing, and also with that not using imagery that includes text as well, because obviously not everyone will be able to see what that text says. Writing descriptive and meaningful links, so not just using things like click here or read more. We want to be able to tell the person where that link will take them if they choose to select it. Obviously an important one for myself, making web forms accessible. Like I mentioned earlier, the fact that it's better practice to have the question label and then the answers to sit below it, because you're more like it's more of a natural thing to sort of scroll down the page to select the answers to the question, and then also using high contrasting colours, so like the play areas where lots of things were lots of different colours to kind of make things stand out, so that people don't perhaps bump into things and they kind of know like the boundary to a certain area of the play area, that sort of thing. So yeah, I hope that's done it justice, following on from Rob's work, and I believe I'm handing over to Richard again.
Thanks, Lucy. That was a brilliant analogy there. I used to take my my gran out on a Saturday to Marks and Spencer's, and she was in a wheelchair, and the aisles used to be so wide that you could get the wheelchair in and out really easily. They had accessible toilets. They had a lift. It made it so easy to take her out there. And I could never understand why certain shops just didn't do that. You know, they made it really difficult to get in. There's no ramps, those kind of things. And not even from a moralistic point of view, my gran was loaded, so she had lots of money to spend on a Saturday. So I think it's just thinking, like, you know, rather than getting into the detail of, oh, I've got to make this document accessible and the boringness of it, you know, it's about thinking of that bigger picture and why we're doing those things. So in terms of next steps, July and September, pretty much more of the same of what you've seen today, really. David and Stephen leading the content roadmap. Lots of user testing, lots of user research, and just trying to improve all of the sovereign content. It's a fantastic opportunity for us to get rid of content that's out of date, it's not being looked at, improve it, make it usable, accessible, and just improve those customer journeys for us. We'll also be trying to align and influence where we are with the transformation teams. They'll be doing a lot of work with services to understand how they need to merge together or split. So we're trying to align what we're doing with what they're doing. And then we'll carry on sharing. Every month we'll carry on doing these sessions, so please do get in touch. Visit the intranet, we'll record all these sessions. You can watch them back later on. Use the iLearn session for accessibility, and the next user research workshop masterclass that Panos is going to be running. Please do come and see that. Some really good stuff will be shown there. So yeah, that's us really. Any questions, do let us know either now or in the future. So thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone. If you need to duck off, appreciate your time in joining us today. We've got another 6 or so minutes. So if anyone's got any questions to do with the service area they're currently on, if there's anyone dialing in from outside, any councillors on the call, anything that you saw that excites you or anything that you saw that makes you concerned, it's now time to openly chat about it. So feel free to raise your hand and Lucy will keep an eye out. Otherwise, we'll look out in the chat for questions.
Simon, you've just put your hand up. If you wanted to come
Yeah,
off mute.
thank you for that. First of all, thanks for that. It was really useful information. I guess really from my point of view is I work in customer services, so we haven't necessarily got our own content which we directly manage per se. We kind of are involved with all types of content because we are the front door and customers come through us and we go on that journey with them to find content and to sort of take them through that journey as well. So my sort of thing for yourselves is as we go through development of content and migration, how we can really help you and the services make the best of that journey, really, because we will have that in, you know, we're talking about insight groups where we're going to external parties. Our teams will have that insight because we're talking to customers about it regularly, and we use the sites. So a lot of my team, we're heavily reliant on the sovereign site to get information with all types of queries, because although we might only deal with certain points of services within the council, you'll always get someone comes through to you and says, what about this? And they would use the website to find that information. So they're very reliant on it. And I think probably the biggest concern or the biggest sort of nervousness for my team is, as we go through this journey, still being able to use that real good point of information and being able to rely on the website that's going to give us that information quickly and correctly. So I think my biggest plea is, I've spoken to David before, just really making sure that we definitely want to work with these services and yourselves on this. Please, I'm willing to help, and got some team members from the contact centres who are willing to help as well. So that was really useful today. But just as you go through the process, just keep us in mind, I think.
I think we have all that lined up. We contacted your team, and David's got that in his plan to utilize the customer service center. I also talked to Andy and got some very valuable insight already. So we definitely want to keep you close, especially with Panos and myself, user research, and David. You're quite a valuable insight because you can give us a lot in terms of very valuable feedback, because you're the ones who have really the closest, you know, to the wide range of citizens. Everyone looking for something will ask you, and then if you can't find it, then.
Well, yeah, if we can't find it, you can,
Yeah.
you know, Doris down the road's not going to find it. And we use our terminology day in and day out. We understand it a bit more because we're in the circle, so to speak. But if we then can't find it, there's no chance of our residents finding it, is there? So there is a lot of value that we can add to it.
Yeah,
so that's great.
Yeah, we're finding that, you know, in different areas as well. Even in early years, like we find that people who explain things to others are quite a very valuable, important in the process, because they need to find things easier so that they can explain some of the more complex things. And yeah, thank you so much, Simon. And
No, thank you. That's really useful today. So thank you very much as well.
I think, Lawrence, you've got something in the diary for, is it Jeff and Louisa in Simon's team from the West and the North for customer services as well?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Fab. I think Simon, David might share with you the timeline, which I think Ian had a screenshot on one of his slides about what services are happening when, because that may give you some insight into if you get calls, whether it will be kind of like starting on the unitary site and then redirecting back to the sovereigns, or if we're actually going to start to move that where the whole journey is actually going to be kept on the sovereign sites. As you know, it's going to be a bit of a 1.5 year progress. So there are certain services that will be brought on more than others. So I think that timeline will give some nice context that David has left the chat, but he should be sending it to you soon.
That's brilliant. I've probably got a load of emails. I've just come back in for the first time after 2 weeks paternity leave, so there's probably going to be something in there. But I thought, you know, captive audience, it's good to raise it.
Yeah, great. Thanks for coming off mute.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Any other questions?